Hi, my name is Amanda Panacea, and you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This is a community for self-healers, biohackers, practitioners, and any other helping professionals. You're in the right place if you're seeking conversations about how pain becomes passion, the connection between physical, energetic, mental, and our spiritual self, finding your body's ancient wisdom, the latest biohacking technologies, clinical research, and if you just want to nerd out about complex biochemistry and quantum physics. But this is also for entrepreneurs who seek infinite abundance and a supportive community. So pour a cup of King coffee or Sisters tea and let's join the revolution. Welcome back to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am Amanda Panacea, and today I am thrilled to welcome the incredible Christy Nault. She is a root cause health practitioner, an educator, and the CEO of the company MicroFlow, who has transformed the way we approach healing. With over a decade of experience, she has helped countless women reverse chronic illnesses, reclaim vitality, and reconnect with their ability to heal. Her personal journey, though, she also struggled with Lyme disease, mast cell activation, and other chronic conditions, which really helped to inspire her to develop a revolutionary approach that combines nourishment, detox, nervous system healing, and plant medicine. What really sets her apart, though, is I just feel like she truly gets it. She deeply understands the complexities of chronic illness, and she offers practical, compassionate solutions that actually work. I trust her completely as a practitioner, and she's one of the few people that I can say I really feel like she gets the entire person and advocates for that innate ability to heal through the way that we perceive and move through our life. And as the founder of MicroFlow, she is leading a movement that's changing lives through microdosing and mental health transformations. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation with Christy as much as I liked sitting down with her. Thank you so much for listening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Healer Revolution podcast. I am Amanda Panacea, and today I'm really excited to get to sit down and have a chat with Christy Nault. Hi, Christy. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Amanda. It's so nice to be with you.
Of course. Yeah. And I want to say before we even get started and we get into your story that through my journey now that I'm pretty much resolved with most things and I have this really deep understanding of what healing actually means, if I was going to hire somebody to support me, there's probably maybe 5 people out there that I would consider, and you would definitely be one of them because of your excellent approach.
Wow. That's like the biggest compliment ever, because honestly, I look up to you so much as a mentor, and I just think that, that's the best compliment ever coming from you. So I received that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, there's just something people in the health space, they parrot a lot of the same things, and you can tell sometimes people don't deeply understand what things mean when they're talking about it. And you can really tell that you do. You've put in the work, you know what you're talking about, you have a lot of confidence, and you get excellent results. So I think it speaks for itself.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thanks for seeing me. That feels good.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's get into, how did you get to this point? What is your history? Why were you so interested in the topics that you talk about? And how have you come to this very expansive idea of what health and wellness means?
Ooh, yeah, it's, it's a deep story. I think like all of us, obviously my health journey is a big piece of the puzzle, but my mission is rooted in so much deeper. And my brother really is like my greatest why. So I can't really share how I got here without rewinding it all the way. So my health journey, I say, started when I was 3 years old. I'm one of 3 children. I'm the middle child. My brother was born perfectly healthy. My parents describe him as the most perfect first child ever. He was intelligent and charismatic, athletic and funny, and just incredible. And at 7 years old, he was severely vaccine injured. And that just kind of changed the trajectory of our entire family life really overnight. So that day of his, just standard well check, he started having grand mal seizures that night, which shortly turned into 350 grand mal seizures every single day. So it was really the most severe case of epilepsy that doctors had ever witnessed. They didn't know what to do with him. He went through over 13 brain surgeries by the time he was like in middle school, had over half of his brain removed. So I spent a lot of my childhood in the hospital. And from a very young age, like I knew in my body what my family was going through was wrong. I didn't have the words, I didn't have the education that I do now. And my mom was such a trailblazer at the time too. So we're talking like early 90s, and she was like really researching all of the quote unquote alternative methods. I mean, back then, even chiropractic care was considered quite like woo, right? So she would read all the books and she would go to my brother's doctor and present all this information. Like, why don't we try doing XYZ? Like, he's on a million medications. This isn't working. And my mom was then diagnosed with Munchausen by proxy by one of my brother's, medical team. Like they're just saying she knows too much. And, with that,
Wow.
they took my brother off all of his meds, cold turkey. He seized for 72 hours straight. It was just very tragic. And I think that's an important part of my story where like I realized, or it was embedded in me at a young age, that using your voice is very dangerous, because my brother then went on to get medically kidnapped from my family. And like by the time he was in middle school, like they just didn't have answers for him. They didn't know what to do with him. So they put him in a state psych institute. We were only allowed to see him like once a month. He was shackled to beds with his wrists and his ankles, like in this dark cement room, because the doctors didn't know how to handle. He was having a lot of like really explosive behavioral outbursts. And we now know that one of the medications he was on at the time now has a black box warning for young men and creating behavioral outbursts. And I share all of this to say that like when a lot of practitioners share their beginnings, a lot of people like had a lot of their own health struggles when they were young. People will say they were on a lot of antibiotics, and that really wasn't my story. I've actually been on antibiotics like once in my life. My story
Wow.
is rooted in deep nervous system dysregulation and trauma. And, a lot of the violence that was going on in my house, that was obviously very fear-based, embedded into my nervous system. And I basically conformed. I learned how to survive by being the most perfect little girl, right? So straight A student, thriving athlete, like literally all the things. I was as perfect as they could come. And I just wanted to be, that perfect little kid that my parents didn't have to worry about because they had so much on their plate. So, I struggled with tons of eating disorders, anorexia by the time I was in 7th grade, very, very undernourished my entire life. And, the story goes on and on. My brother passed away in 2015 during a seizure. So while he was like sick most of his life, it was still quite unexpected. And it was really like that shock in my body that really set the tone for like everything to come through. So chronic Lyme diagnosis, endometriosis, POTS, MCAS, all of the things. And I just knew that like I couldn't go down the same path as my brother. I had already been on a holistic path for many years prior to his death. I got my start in this world. I was a personal trainer and Pilates trainer for many, many years and operated quite differently than like a lot of my colleagues. But what I was doing, even with all the healthy eating and, everything we are told that's great, like it wasn't working. And that really set me off on the path of exploring more energy healing and spirituality. And, his death really it like opened me up. I was quite psychically and spiritually open as a young kid, shut that down for a long time. And Jamie's death really kind of brought that back through to me. It's actually such a gift. It's like this beautiful disaster that I wouldn't change any part of the story. I know that my brother and I have this really deep soul contract, and he really signed up to go through all of this to wake me up so I can help, honestly, the masses. And I feel like that is how it's rolling out right now. So deep story with a lot of layers. And just thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, and obviously like growing up, even if you didn't have your own health issues, but you witnessed somebody just not having answers in the medical community, there's so much distrust and fear about even having health issues. So it makes perfect sense why you may have adopted, like, I have to be perfect. I can never have a health issue. And then despite your best efforts, here comes, with all the stress and trauma and trying to be the perfectionism, then you might have had that crash, especially after even a huge trauma like that.
Totally. Yeah. The perfectionism, I think, runs so deep for so many of us. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite quotes that you said is that if you type A your way into this problem, you're not going to type A your way out.
yes, I think we've all had to learn that like the hard way, because I feel like a lot of people just project their trauma onto their healing journey, right? Like a lot of us women who have been chronically ill, I know we don't all share the same story, but I think a lot of us can relate to the survival mechanisms of perfection, or however that turned out for each and every one of us. And then a lot of us get into the holistic world, and it's like we have to avoid every single toxin and be so perfect. And it's like we're creating another mental prison for ourselves. So, I've been down that path as well. And I was probably the most sick when I was, avoiding all of the toxins and trying to eat the most perfect ever. So I stand strong with that statement. We can't type A our way out of our health issues.
Right, absolutely. I totally agree. And when you first get sick, you're like, okay, well, maybe it's this one thing that's causing it. And so you start to eliminate more and more and more and more and more until your world is just so tiny that you're not able to live, you're not able to function, you're sensitive to everything. Hence, why mast cell activation is in your list of diagnoses as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about after you become the Pilates teacher, and what was the first like educational material that you started to do that really started to open up your eyes to how you work today with clients?
Yeah, I mean, I had such an amazing client base when I was a trainer. I was a trainer for almost 13 years, and I attracted I only worked with women. I was like at the time one of the top 5 personal trainers in the US year after year. And it was because I was exploring things outside of like traditional diet, exercise, period, because my clients were so committed, yet they were having a lot of the same issues that I was having, right? They were having like more gut issues, a lot of anxiety issues, so many hormone issues. So I think like the first thing probably that had me pivoting way back when was like I started doing cycle syncing with a lot of my fitness clients, and that turned into like holistic hormone balancing. Then I would infuse a lot of lymph work and Reiki healing and breath work. And I just created this really beautiful, like holistic fitness program. And a lot of it obviously was self-taught as well. I was kind of healing along with my clients, dedicating my body to science, like doing all the things, as I'm sure obviously you have as well. And I feel like the biggest breakthroughs were when I shifted away from veganism. So I was a really strict vegan for a long time, and so were a lot of my clients. So just starting to learn more about like healing the metabolism in a way that actually makes sense, not from like propaganda, right? And then all the things we all teach, like opening the drainage pathways, but really understanding what that means from an emotional perspective as well. And parasite cleansing and a lot of subconscious work. I don't even know like the order of how it all came through, but it's just been like a beautiful weaving of the physiological, the emotional, the spiritual, even the ancestral that comes out through all of this. And I feel like I wouldn't be in this place if I didn't have the experience with like tens of thousands of PT clients before ever even transitioning into this work. I really saw obviously what didn't work from calories in, calories out, the stuff we're traditionally taught.
Yeah, and it's funny, when I first got out of my functional medicine master's, I was like, I'm going to create a course and I'm going to teach people what I know now. And of course, it was like I would just be parroting the exact same information that I just learned. I had no experience. I had no idea if that stuff worked. And I was like, I don't think I can get out of working with people, and just the understanding and the way that helps you formulate like what do you actually believe, what works, what doesn't work for yourself, but also for people, instead of that just parroting research studies, which, are mostly done by males. So I think that piece of the more people you can work with, the better, is so important if you do want to be any sort of practitioner or educator. You can't skip that part.
No. And I didn't even know, like, I kind of created this business by accident because I wanted to go full time with everything I do now, but I was in a really strict non-compete with the health club that I worked at. And I wasn't allowed to do even the health coaching on the side. Everything was kind of like on the DL. And I did it for, probably since 2010 or even earlier than that. But we all lost our jobs and got laid off during COVID. And it was like the best gift ever, because in a day I was able to be like, okay, bye with all of this. And those of you who still feel aligned that were working with me, you can come down this path. Like, this is what I'm dedicating everything to. But yeah, I mean, that experience with so many women in the beginning was really built the foundation for what I know to be true now.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's backtrack to veganism, because I feel like this is also a really common theme. I was also vegan, not for very long, but I stayed a vegetarian for over 10 years. So I ate eggs and some cheese, but I avoided all other meat. And I've heard this amongst so many women our age, probably because of the propaganda back then. You probably read the book Skinny Bitch. I feel like everyone read that. It was like the only book about health in like 2006 or something like that.
Yeah.
And why do you think so many of the health conscious women today got sucked into veganism? And why do you think they experienced the health crash later on?
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of again, the good thing to do if we care about the animals and we care about the planet, right? Like, a lot of propaganda science that was fed to us. And of course, we want to be a great human and we want to help the collective as a whole. I was an animal lover and, I'm obsessed with Mother Gaia. And I think that's part of it. And a lot of us probably weren't awake yet to just a lot of the corruption that we've been fed from a very young age. So I think it was took a whole unlearning. It's like, once you realize that one thing is untrue, you have to realize that there's this whole web of connected lies that we have been living through and believing since the time we were really young. So it takes a really strong person to start unwinding, all of the false science and so forth. And I think it sounds great, right? Like, we're doing all this juicing and we're detoxing. We've always been told a detox is basically starving yourself, drinking lemon water, and taking a bunch of juices. I think that was probably the baseline of health and detox through the women of our generation. And yeah, I mean, obviously with a lot of, it's not just the veganism, that's a huge part of it, but I think a lot of us can relate to the growing up through the 90s as well. We're we were fat free for so long. We ate light, we ate calorie free, chemical ridden food for so long. A lot of us struggled with eating disorders or went on so many extreme diets. So it was that with the veganism on top of it. And we're just so deeply malnourished. So of course, as we know now, a malnourished body becomes a toxic body. Our body doesn't run on thin air. Our body needs to have the resources and the energy to do all the jobs that it is designed to do, including detoxification. So we just become this big ball of toxic soup, right? So, and then I think a lot of people just start targeting all of the heavy metals and the parasites. And I'm a huge advocate of parasite cleansing. It's a huge part of my work, but it's not going to work when we're in a deeply malnourished state. So there is that really important order of operations. And, we can go even further through the lens of the nervous system as well. I think a lot of people think nervous system healing is just meditating and doing breath work and EFT tapping, right? And going into the jungles of Peru and doing ayahuasca, all of those things have their place and they're great. But the foundation of nervous system healing is nourishment and building resourcing within our body. So we just become we're not really resilient at all when we are malnourished. We're basically operating from the blueprint of scarcity too. So I think it goes so much deeper, like it's easier for us to be in fear, easier for us to like forget our power, easier for us to be controlled, to fall into victim consciousness, right? Victims need saviors, and we just believe all of that like savior propaganda out there. Woo, I could like keep going on with this, but I'll stop there.
We'll get to all of that. But I kind of want to bring it back to what you originally said about, when we're really malnourished, we are just more prone to these toxicities, more vulnerable to accumulations. And part of that is going to be because these nutrients, like you said, are required for our liver to detox, for our kidneys to function, for our immune system to function. And they're in the vegan diet, it is missing some really key ingredients, especially like zinc. And that zinc to copper balance is going to be a perfect breeding ground for parasites and fungal overgrowth when we've got not enough zinc in comparison to that copper. And I see this over and over and over
Oh
with
yeah,
so
I'm
many
sure.
people that I work with, myself included, after the 10 years of veganism, or as being a vegetarian as well. And also the piece that you brought in with the depletion also comes that nervous system piece. Our nervous system is electrical. And guess what? It's important to have minerals
Yes.
to power the nervous system. The brain needs fat. And in that diet, oftentimes people are not getting enough of those types of nutrients.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was like very apparent in my own journey. I got really into parasite cleansing way back when, can't remember what year, but it was like, it made a big impact in my health originally. Like, I feel like that was probably the biggest jump in healing the endometriosis was the first couple of parasite cleanses. But the problem was I kept cleansing and cleansing and cleansing. And it's like every single cleanse, I was releasing tens of thousands of worms. Like it just, they never stopped. So then it's like, okay, we got to go deeper. Why has our body become so hospitable to these bugs in the first place? And obviously that's where like just the basic foundations come in. So really huge proponent of order of operations and like parasite cleansing. While it's so epic, it's like it should be thought of as like level 10 out of 10, in my opinion, on a healing journey.
Yeah. So tell us about this order of operations, because especially like on TikTok, for some reason, the last year, parasite cleansing was like,
oh my
the
gosh,
#1 videos for
popping
some
off.
reason.
Yeah. I know. It kind of like, it's frustrating because I feel like it dampens the work that I do in a sense. I mean, not really. I feel like people resonate with how I teach it.
Yeah.
But yes, order of operations is probably the missing piece in most health conscious women's journeys, and just a lot of practitioners that perhaps don't have as much experience either. I always say, like, I feel like functional medicine, even a lot of naturopathic doctors, they operate quite identically to conventional medicine, just replacing like conventional tests with little more expensive labs and replacing pharmaceuticals with supplements, diving right into killing, killing, killing. And it's oftentimes making people a lot worse. The type of woman that I work with is typically a woman who has been on this journey for a long time and has probably worked with like 10 other doctors prior to finding me. And what moves the needle the most is, yes, all of the multidimensional approaches that I take, but also just anchoring in the very basic foundations and order of operations. So to me, like when we're talking order of operations, I always start everyone with just remineralizing the body, right? Focusing on nutrient dense food, and with a strong emphasis on stabilizing blood sugar. We can't go on and really heal anything if we're on a blood sugar roller coaster all day and our body is still just surviving on stress hormones. Circadian rhythm is obviously everything when it comes to any physiological function in the body, but especially the nervous system, right? Like, I think we overcomplicate a lot of what nervous system healing actually is. And if we can take it back to like minerals, nourishment, circadian rhythm, more time harmonizing out in nature immersion, like being in the sun, optimizing circadian function, it's going to help our body perform at a cellular level. For me, a really big part of foundations is also starting to attune to the pelvic floor. That's something I teach a lot in my work because I see the pelvic floor as the root of our nervous system. And I feel like it is a more gentle approach to start building that foundational health, building some capacity within the nervous system without blowing that fuse. So, I mean, there are many aspects to foundations, but that's kind of where I start. I'm a breathwork facilitator as well. So I do have students start with breathwork, but not like I teach like long 1, 2, 3 hour shamanic breathwork journeys, and that's not where we start, right? We start with like 5 minutes and we titrate our way up. So that's really important too when thinking of order of operations. We can't dive right into the deep end. And once we, a lot of people at that point will start to feel more energized, right? Their sleep starts to improve. They have more energy. Their systems like do start to improve. Like they just see a lot of optimization through foundations alone. And also, obviously, a part of foundations is going to be mast cell stabilization for those who need it, because we can't go into any form of like drainage pathway work, intense drainage pathway work, or detoxification if people are just like in these massive histamine reactions. So that's kind of a whole separate conversation. And then we kind of let it flow into drainage pathway opening work, just optimizing our body's natural systems of detoxification and elimination. Like you said before, really with a strong emphasis on the liver and bile and lymph system and making sure people are pooping. Like whatever isn't getting eliminated is obviously getting recirculated. So opening that up. And then also that's where when people have more of a reserve, a threshold, a capacity built within the body, I feel like that's when we can also start to address the emotional stuff a little bit more. And, when we start to open the liver pathway, like the liver is the seat of all emotions as well, and people have the capacity to hold it, like people are going to start to have emotional patterns be illuminated, and we can start working through a lot of that. So it is within the realm of drainage that we can start to get a little bit deeper into the emotional healing work. I should probably mention as well, like my personal methodology with all of this is I'm also using microdosing magic mushrooms throughout the process. I have my own microdosing company called MicroFlow that I launched in 2002. And I do have most people start, we always rely on muscle testing to see if the body like is ready. But a lot of people do start the microdosing within the foundations realm. And we can talk about that later. And, everyone wants to get to the parasite cleansing part. Everyone who works with me, they probably find me through a lot of my posts about parasite cleansing. But, the thing that I always drill in is we have to operate at the pace of the body, not the ego. So for some people, they may be ready like on month 4 to start getting into some deeper detoxification. And for some other people, it might take like a year or so to get there. But that's what I mean by order of operations. It's really operating according to the intelligence of the body, so we don't like blow that fuse or set the body back, or mobilize more toxins than the body's ready to actually eliminate.
Yeah, very well said. And I remember a couple years ago, there was like another order of operations that was getting talked about because of Dr. Klinghardt, which was parasites first. And as someone who got so much worse doing parasite cleansing, I always was like intuitively, this is wrong. Like,
Yes.
no. Like the people I'm working with can't handle this either. And, probably I'm attracting people who are pretty hypersensitive as well. But I was always like, I know that everyone out on the internet right now says to do parasites first because that holds on to Lyme and that holds on to the other toxins and you have to get rid of it. But I promise you, if you go into a mast cell flare or your eczema gets worse or your gut issues become worse because we're stirring all this up, you are going to be set back so much further. And so now, even if like when I run bioenergetic testing with people, even if parasite tinctures or herbs come up in the beginning, I always, even though it's resonating, I'm like, we need some more foundational before we jump into this. Like, I know it's saying this is a big priority, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So we need to kind of go much slower before we get to that stuff. And we'll get to it, like
Yes,
you said,
we will.
it'll come.
It's like a trust of surrender too. Like we know that we need that, but just because we know we need that doesn't mean we need that right now. And people always want to go into the extremes. That's part of our trauma. That's part of our survival. That's part of us being in that fight or flight. So it is really like a beautiful practice of surrender and like the waiting process too. And a lot of people, like most of my students, start naturally eliminating a lot of parasites before we ever even get to parasite cleansing. So I
Yeah.
think that is helpful for people to see in the process too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was also one of those people as well. Like after certain like energy releases, for example, not uncommon to see
Mm-hmm.
parasites passing. When I started mineral balancing, just taking nutrients, started eliminating tons of parasites because the terrain will start to rebalance and be able to handle and get rid of the things that it's now waking up to seeing if it has all the things it needs to function, which includes nutrients and energy and
Yes.
parasympathetic activation.
And when we start to eliminate that fear frequency from the body, we eliminate the frequency in which parasites are attracted to. That was like, honestly, I have the craziest story I'd be happy to share, but like
Oh, yes,
how,
please do.
okay, I'll share an energy parasite story, but this was like the biggest life-changing light bulb moment for me, not only in my personal healing evolution, but how I taught everything. I've always been very spiritually open. I've been Reiki attuned to like Reiki 1, 2, 3, master many years ago. I was practicing energy work. I was practicing all the things I do now, but was still operating in a very like fragmented sense. Like I thought I was embodying mind, body, spirit, but I didn't really fully get it. So maybe about 6 years ago, the timeline, yeah, I don't even know. I was in a dark night of the soul. Like it was thick, it was challenging. I was having a really hard time. And I knew I needed a little support from one of my favorite energy healers at the time. I'm not a person who relies on outside people to help heal me. I would see her for like a tune up, like once or twice a year. I reached out and I'm like, I am in the darkest of darks. Nothing was resonating. Like, we've all been there. And so I went in for an energy healing session. She's like, come over to my house. I was on her table. Um, and it was wonderful. Like she's, coughing and just releasing so much energy from my body, and I'm crying and having an incredibly cathartic experience. And this is very normal for a lot of energy healing sessions. I finished the session and I just felt like, I feel like I transmuted a lot, felt light as a feather. I'm like hugging my healer and just thanking her. I felt great and I was on my way. So I had about an hour commute home. And as I was in the car, I'm like, I'm gonna poop my pants. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna make it home. And I did. I made it home. I finally got home. I went to the bathroom and I looked down and there were thousands and thousands and thousands of dead worms in the toilet. I wasn't on any form of parasite protocol. I hadn't been on killing herbs for so long. And I was just like, damn, like, you know, I know what parasites are, but like, what the heck are they actually? And
Yeah.
that's what really got me thinking so much deeper about the multidimensionality of parasites, but like, it's just so wild. And this isn't an abnormal experience by any means. Now, this is something because of the way that I teach the work that I do, and I infuse a lot of the emotional and the energetics. Actually, most of my students now have this experience as well, but that was just big light bulb moment, and I'm forever grateful for that session. It was wild.
Yeah. I've had similar kind of situations, not thousands, but it's like, oh, the next day there's a giant tapeworm. And yeah, so that's exactly your question. Like, what actually are they? Why would releasing my emotion and changing my vibration cause my body to purge out worms? Like, can you go deeper into that?
Oh my God, so many layers to this. Yes. I mean, I think a huge piece of the puzzle is fear. I feel like I see the opposite of light, maybe not necessarily dark, or I do, I feel like dark is fear matrix, and parasites thrive in fear, they reproduce in fear, and they amplify the frequency of fear. So I've noticed throughout the many years working in this field that the more childhood trauma or the more trauma in general one of my clients or students had, the higher their parasitic load, right? So there's just like so many connections here. And maybe I'll take it like the energetic route, I guess, first and bring it home. But for me, as I started exploring this trauma fear piece, what came through to me is like so many of us as children or even as adults, we survived in the world through dissociation, right? Like that was our primary method of survival. And I was in meditation, and how it was shown to me to teach my students is I would always have my clients or students envision an abandoned home. So if you were to envision an abandoned home, think about it. They break down, they decay, they gather filth, they attract animals and squatters. It's really easy from anything from the outside to enter when nobody lives there, right? So we need to start understanding this is also happening when our higher self or our soul doesn't feel safe to be in our body, when we dissociate or get caught in escapism loops. I think this is very common in spiritual spaces too. Anytime we're disconnected, disembodied, or becoming enchanted with like disembodied ascension, which is somewhere I was for a really long time, thinking like healing and spirituality was like out in the cosmos. It's not necessarily a good thing. So when you are not home, right? And you being your higher self, home being our body, it creates really easy access for outside forces to enter the body in the form of parasitic entities, right, that fuels biological parasites. So that is a huge piece of like the fear trauma puzzle I have honed in is dissociation. And I don't want this to be like a fear-based conversation, like, oh, like we're, just being attacked by dark entities. They're here to bring us home and wake us up and create boundaries, right? But I think it makes a lot of sense about like how this happens. And then, of course, we talk about the physiological aspects of being so malnourished and so toxic. It's like there's so many layers to this. So I just, could go on, but like when we're talking about heavy parasitic loads in the body that are like devastating the body, it's physical and it's energetic. And my message is very clear that we can't just take a bunch of cell core protocols or anti-parasitic herbal protocols and think it's going to solve all of our issues. Yeah, parasite cleansing really needs to be understood through the lens of the emotional, spiritual, and physical body. So I think like what, if anyone could take away anything from this conversation, is we need to also, beyond just like optimizing our nutrition and circadian rhythm and blood sugar and all that really important stuff, we need to learn how to root into our body and create this like unwavering internal safety. We have to create a safe home that our soul or our higher self doesn't feel like it needs to flee from. So it's like creating this well-maintained and occupied home that isn't an open entry way to outside forces. I feel like that's a missing piece that a lot of people aren't addressing. And it's really important for parasites too.
Yeah.
Well, I think like you and I share probably a lot of like similar history with the party girl days, right? Like I think I've read about your stuff too. And a big part of my like coping mechanism when I was young, it was like perfect. And then 20s, it was like crazy party girl. Like I blacked out like 98% of the time I drank. And we can think about this dissociation through that lens as well. Like our consciousness is leaving. That's why it's called spirits, right? Like,
yes. Yeah. I used to want to black out. Like how embarrassing is that? That was
the goal, right? I know.
Yeah, I love how you kind of wrapped this all around how the emotional aspect of parasites is going to affect how well or how much parasitic load is in your body, but also how it's affecting you. Because there is that argument, just like bacteria, parasites are part of us and they're totally normal. Why would you parasite cleanse when your body should be taking care of them? There's like that opposite end of the argument. Yeast, bacteria, we need those parasites. They help to clean up. But when they're to the point of impacting your physical health and to the point where you might be having diagnoses that are related to parasites, and they even in Western culture, they talk about how parasites can affect your behavior. We've all heard of toxoplasma. Well, maybe not everyone, but most people have heard of toxoplasma and how it can cause you to be a crazy cat lady, and hypersexual, impulsive. People talk about like insomnia and anxiety around the full moon. And it's kind of well known that your behavior can be changed by these entities or creatures in your body.
Yes.
So it would make sense that if we could change our behavior, our energy, who we are, that would also affect those parasites as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's like so important to be able to hold so many truths at once. Like things don't have to be so black and white. It's like, yes, do we both agree that terrain is everything? 100%. And then a lot of us, and ourselves included, like when you're in just a very chronically ill state, it's going to probably take a little bit more to get out of those deep loops. Like usually cleansing is also going to be required, and the terrain is so important. And I feel like people like feel like they have to get in one camp or the other. And
Yeah.
to me, that's just another sign of like not a lot of capacity within the nervous system when you can't see possibility, right? And things have to be this way or this way. And it's like, how about it can all be true? And when you've worked with as many people as you and I have worked with, I feel like a lot of the people spewing like it's only terrain, which I 100% agree with. Like terrain is a huge part of the puzzle. A lot of those people maybe don't work with a lot of like actually clients. I feel like a lot of them are just influencers too. So it can all be true. And I feel like that is just a huge through line in this holistic process and healing journey and self-development and all the things. Like how many possibilities do we have the capacity to hold? I feel like
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that I like to tell people is every modality out there has prevailed because it has worked for some people.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's TCM, mineral balancing, the parasite cleansing, microdosing, doing nothing, German new medicine, like everything has worked for somebody out there, which is why we have all these camps to begin with, because people get so passionate about the thing that finally helped them.
Mm-hmm.
But what combination of things is going to be your things? Like you're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to
Totally.
take that responsibility to self-experiment, to talk to a lot of people, to learn on your own. Because, like you said in the beginning, the medical system doesn't
Yeah.
know how to help us either. So,
Yeah. And it's like,
yeah.
I think as long as we are looking for someone outside of ourselves to like have the primary solution to fix us, we're going to be led astray. So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, with my students and in my work, it's really reminding people of that creator consciousness, that intuition that exists within every single one of us. And when we can attune to our own intuition and muscle testing, it's like there is no one way. It's going to look different for all of us. And I love that you said that because that's such an important piece as well.
Yeah. So let's get into microdosing because that can be a big piece to help people kind of foster that intuition and start to look at their patterns behaviorally, subconsciously. Because I was one of those people. I mean, I did a lot of drugs, but I used to think that I didn't have intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a best friend who did Reiki, and I always thought that she was really intuitive, and I didn't have that at all.
Yeah.
But I had to figure that out and develop that through the last couple of years. So how can microdosing kind of fit in to helping people with this piece?
So many ways. I feel like let's start from like a very physiological, kind of easy to understand perspective is microdosing psilocybin or magic mushies. It ignites neurogenesis. So it's actually helping to stimulate the growth of new neural networks in the brain and in the nervous system. And those of us who have experienced a lot of unprocessed emotions or trauma experience a lot of disintegration in the brain and in the body. The brain, the right and the left side aren't connecting. The brain's not connecting to the body, right? Everything is very fragmented. So with the support of microdosing mushrooms, it creates a lot more connectivity within the body. So that alone is just like so incredible, and people feel that right away. But how I see microdosing work the best, I can say, is like it acts as an illuminator. And most people think microdosing should make you feel like rainbows and butterflies and unicorns and experience all the quote unquote good stuff. And that should be a part of it. It should bring like a sparkle to your life. So when I'm talking about microdosing, it is a sub-perceptual amount. I call them sober doses. You should not feel high from them. You can drive, you can work, you can parent, you can live your everyday life. So I want to make that very apparent. But in addition to all of like the gratitude that it can highlight and just more loving, vulnerable, deeply connected relationships, reconnecting with yourself, reconnecting with others, with Gaia, with Source, all of that is a great part of the illumination, but it also illuminates our shadows. Microdosing makes the unconscious conscious. It brings shadow to light. And we cannot heal what we are unaware of, right? So a lot of us, most of us, I would say like 100% of the physical manifestation of symptoms have deeply subconscious, energetic, and emotional roots that like they're subconscious. We don't know that they exist, right? So it helps us, kind of bubble up these subconscious patterns, whatever they may be. I could give a million different examples here. And it creates the capacity to be with it. To me, it like helped me see these patterns kind of through a rose-colored lens, through a loving lens and less shame. And when we can be with them, and we can start to like communicate with our body and metabolize these emotions through journaling or through somatics, whatever it may be, we have the opportunity to finally create like a new pathway, and release like these patterns and literally rewire, right? Like so many of us are operating from this default mode network. We're just like repeating what's always been safe. So the microdosing really helps us pattern interrupt and create new habits and create new perceptions and new ways that we, connect with others. It creates a lot of spaciousness in our reactivity. I noticed a lot in like relationships, things that used to trigger me. I was able to like pause and kind of go inward and see like where that wound actually lies within myself that I was outward projecting and blaming on other people. And I feel like the best part of this conversation, because shadow work can feel very scary to a lot of people, right? A lot of people have been like, damn, I've been through hell and back already. The last thing I want to do is do more shadow work. And we have to remember, obviously, it's a huge part of the healing process, but within our shadow, it's all not like bad, dark, spooky stuff. Within our shadow also lies like all of our untapped light and gifts and so many things we have yet to explore. So for me, it helped me alchemize so many like traumas that just other modalities didn't touch. It really helped me heighten and activate my creativity and my life force energy, but it helped me step more deeply into my soul aligned mission and just like really activate these truths that exist so deeply within my DNA, right? And the microdosing also helps dissolve some of those fear barriers that previously prevented me from taking aligned action on some of these things that I knew that I wanted to do. And a lot of us are sick because we're operating in an old paradigm that has expired. Like when we're not aligned with our, I call it soul mission, we can call it so many other things, but when we're not operating in integrity with who we truly are and why we came to this planet in the first place, like we're going to experience some disconnection in the body, disharmony, right? So it really just helps us. I think like the dissolving of the fear is a huge, wild piece of the puzzle because, wow, it really helps us just step into who we were always meant to be and who we were. Like, I think people are also afraid of talking about psychedelics or using them because they're like, I've seen all these crazy stories and I don't want to, I want good change, but I don't want to like get too far out there, right? And how I see it is the mushrooms don't change us whatsoever. It brings us home to the remembrance and the truth of who we really were before all the pain, the shame, the programming. So it's like kind of just chipping away at all of the armor and all of the falsities, right? To actually bring us home to who we actually are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, like before I ever discovered microdosing, when I would do macro dosing, after the 3 relationships I had before this, I broke up with all of them after a psychedelic trip. All of a sudden I could see, what am I doing? I could see
Yes.
like the patterns. I could see that I wasn't happy. I could feel that my body was reacting to it. I could see I'm repeating this from my childhood, the same type of relationships, kind of a thing. And it was just like, now I know, now I can feel it. Now I can make that decision and choose to change. And it became easy. Whereas before it was like, oh, I don't know if I should, where you're trying to talk yourself out of it. And this time I wanted to tell you later on in the podcast, I did get your MicroFlow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yay, I love that.
Yeah. And I've been doing it on and off for the last like 2 months. And, part of wanting to do it was because I have this big move coming up and I just really wanted to feel really connected and make sure that I was making decisions from that aligned, authentic self. So, like what you call higher self or soul mission is just without the filter of any of the shoulds or shouldn'ts or old stories and paradigms to be able to make decisions for what's going to be best for me
Yeah.
and my true self, my mission. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's beautiful. It is like the best gift, especially through, making changes that are aligned and not out of like fear, right? A lot of us think like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people can confuse fear and intuition and it makes sense too. Like change is hard. How you said you really couldn't like break up with people until after the psychedelic journeys because you couldn't unsee the truth. And a lot of us are so addicted to our own pain, our own scarcity, our own chaos. That was so abundantly apparent for me in my process. I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
completely like rewired scarcity um and victim consciousness in like a week. I mean, it was unbelievable. I'm
Wow.
not saying that that's like the process for everyone, but
Yeah.
it was just, and we know that our nervous systems, like those of us who teach about the nervous system, our nervous system is wired for one thing and one thing only, which is safety. But safety to the nervous system simply means what's familiar, like what's been the patterns in the past. So, in order to truly shift that, we really need subconscious shifting. And I feel like microdosing works even more powerfully than something like hypnosis on the subconscious. And I am such a proponent of microdosing. While I love, big plant medicine journeys, and I've done some myself as well. For the type of people that I start working with, a lot of people don't have the capacity to be able to hold and then integrate such a large psychedelic experience. So I feel like this helps us like build the threshold. So then if you do choose later on to go into a bigger journey, like you can actually integrate it. I think for a lot of people, it's destabilizing if they go into that too early. So microdosing it's micro shifts that have big impact, but it is gentle. It can have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of powerful insights, but it is gentle on the body.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of stories of people doing macro doses and their nervous system is worse off after, or they have a
Mhm.
traumatizing experience. I mean, who hasn't? Well, okay. We all know about the bad trip. That is possible. And I
Yeah.
think those things happen when we don't have the capacity to be able to sit with the things that are coming up in a macro dose.
Mhm.
And that's why you have to start really slow. You got to dip your toe in just for a small amount, which
Yes.
I think is why microdosing is so helpful as well, because we can start to gain that confidence that I am able to tolerate little things. I am able to sit
Mhm.
here with an emotion or something that might come up from the past.
Totally. And it is such an embodied experience. I feel like a lot of psychedelics, and it's some that I've done in the past, like I've worked with Bufo, 5-MeO DMT, like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
very dissociative, right? And so the whole purpose, or like a huge part of what I teach, is like I said before, we have to create that unwavering internal safety in the body, be rooted into the body to really see a lot of shifts. And the microdosing is a super embodied experience.
Absolutely. My boyfriend wanted to do them, and I was like, if you do these, you have to also be making the changes so it sticks. You have to be
Hmm.
integrating. It's not going to do the work for you.
Yes.
You have to say, I have this intention, and you have to follow through with your actions, or
Hmm.
it's not going to be as powerful and effective. So,
Right. Like the medicine it's a tool, just like, it's a
mhm.
powerful tool, but it's not the be all end all. It's not a cure all. And, I have this incredible company that's helped tens of thousands of people, and I create this supplement is just amazing. And I'm not out here selling it as like, this is going to fix everything. I mean, this is
Right.
part of the process. The medicine can show you the door, right? You still have to walk through it. You still have to take those aligned actions to create your version of heaven on earth, or the life of your dreams, or, your desired health. Yeah, we still have to be proactive.
Yeah, that people miss the action piece. The action,
Minor detail.
the action is the trauma work. You can
Yes.
believe that you can be different and change, and you can meditate and see your future all day, but if you don't take any action towards that future, it will never come. It's not going to drop out of the sky. Like,
Yes. And it does, I mean, it definitely helps, I think, with like, at least in my experience and a lot of feedback I've had from a lot of students and customers over the years of, it really helps kind of dissolve that fear. So a perfect example is many years ago, New Year's Day, I hopped on the interwebs and I was like, all right, hello, everyone. I'm going to start a YouTube channel this year. And I just announced it to the world. And I got all the fancy equipment and all the things. And I was so informed. I had so much to share. And I would get in front of that camera and all the lights. And I just couldn't do it. I was so stuck in fear and I was picking myself apart and, you're so ugly, you need to lose more weight. No one wants to listen to you. You're not smart enough. Everyone's so much further ahead. I mean, it's like, whoa, the looping thoughts were insane. So a huge part of my healing journey has been stepping into being able to use my voice. And I think one of my biggest wounds was like not using my voice. And it's probably from one of those big core wounds in childhood when my mom did so, my brother was medically like kidnapped from our family, right? So for
yeah.
so long, I literally could not speak my truth. I was conforming to so many things. I just wanted to fit in, right? And it was through the process of being able to like share my message, use my voice, like teach large courses and master classes and just like speak, right? Speak from a place of authenticity. That has been a huge thing that has like healed my body too. And
Oh
I
yeah.
honestly don't know if I would have been able to ever do that without the support of the microdosing and working through some of those like really, really deep-seated fears.
Yeah, I think this is a really common theme as well with that perfectionism. Like I used to, when I first started and I had that same goal, like I have to start a podcast so that I could use my voice, so that I can learn to talk to people without alcohol and like be a
Yeah.
normal person. But when I first started, it was almost like, I have to read a script. And so I would make like notes, like I'm gonna read this and these are gonna be the topics. And it was so difficult, but again, just takes practice, just takes
Mhm.
reprogramming your belief that you can't and proving that you can with the action. And,
Yes.
nobody starts out with any of this stuff on top. Everyone starts out with
Yeah.
some embarrassing
Oh,
first
yeah.
stumbling
I've got
words.
plenty of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. So for anyone out there, just start practicing. Just like with any
Yeah.
skill, you'll get better at it.
And not like wait. I think a lot of people think like, oh, you're so confident, or like, Amanda, you're so confident. I need to wait till I feel fully confident and no fear in my body until I can take that aligned action. And my thing is like, when other practitioners or people reach out for support, I'm like, no, I've really just learned how to take those aligned actions, even when I was like scared shitless. Yes, the
Yeah.
medicine helps you, but it doesn't mean it's like no fear exists in this realm, right? Like you still have to work through them, but you've got like this support to do it more easily.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think anyone, as many times as they may perform on stage, is like, no big deal. Everything will be fine. I have no fear, no anxiety. I think there's always a little bit in there. And that's part of our biology, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the reason we have that is to motivate. It's part of motivation, that little bit of
Totally.
anxiety helps us to actually care about what we're doing and to practice instead of
Mm-hmm.
just showed up and messed up a bunch of times. It's going to be a crappy podcast. It's like
Right.
there's a reason behind even the uncomfortable aspects of our nervous system too.
Yes, I still experience it all the time. I mean, I literally speak and teach for a living, and I still get nervous before like big master classes, even like podcast interviews, right? I feel great as soon as I open my mouth and start talking, but
Yeah.
it's still there. I've been able to reframe it too, because I feel like, one of my gifts, which we can all do, but something that I am really proud of is the way I energetically prepare, because I used to be like you, where I'd have to have like every detail of like notes to teach anything. And now I don't really like, yeah, maybe sometimes if I'm teaching something, little rough outline. But for me, energetically preparing for anything is like taking care of my nervous system, taking care of my emotional body. And it's really like rooting in, making sure my higher self is rooted into my body, making sure my body is rooted into Gaia, and making sure I'm also connected to, source consciousness, all of the things. And what I've been able to reframe is like when I feel all this energy in my body pre whatever I'm doing, I'm like, oh, that's actually like life force energy, kind of like getting ready to explode. Because anytime I hit record, I feel so good too. So it's also like a good thing, like you said, it's a sign that we care. And also like, wow, like we have so much like creative force and so much life force energy that just wants to like be birthed through. So it's another really beautiful way to look at that.
Yes, I love that. So tell us a little bit about some of your most important parts of your day, the things that
Mm.
you try to never skip, and some of the things that you feel like are most impactful, especially if somebody's busy and they're like, I can only do so much in a day. What's the biggest priority for me?
Biggest priority for sure is like getting enough sun. I feel like it's, even if it is 5 minutes in the morning, like rather than getting up. And I always encourage people like, do not look at your phone for the first at least half an hour of the day. Because if we are waking up, checking email, going to Instagram, I mean, that's just going to set the foundation of our nervous system for the rest of the day. So ideally, it would be like setting the phone down when we wake up, hydrating, getting some sun in the eyes. And if we don't have a lot of time, getting a nutrient dense protein forward breakfast in is going to really help us carry through the day with energy, with nervous system stabilization. I feel like those are three key pillars: minerals, hydration, sun, and like a nutrient dense breakfast in the morning. And then if you can, like, do you have 5 minutes to journal or do a quick breath work? Not everyone's going to have like a full hour, right, to get into some of these practices, but I do think that some form of like connecting in, setting an intention for the day rather than just like letting life happen to you. I think it's really important. Like, how do you want to make life happen today? Like, we need to set those intentions. So that's why I really, with the MicroFlow, my microdosing company, in the packaging, I have like a little 5-step recommended intention, and it's just really getting clear for the day. So whether you're microdosing or not, I think we can do something like that. But for me, like my greatest modality is breath work. So sometimes it only is 5 minutes, but that is going to be a staple in my day. And then just like meals, right? I think that I used to have like a 537 step like daily biohack and health routine. And now it's like, can I get 3 meals in? Can I get outside as often as possible? Can I move my body every day? If you don't have time to go to the gym every day, like that's okay. You can move your body in so many other ways. Blocking blue light at night is going to be so important too. Prioritizing sleep. And I feel like just connection. I think it was really challenging for me when I was in such a bubble by myself in healing for so many years. And now I really understand like how important deep connection is. So I'm really grateful. I have a partner. We both work from home. And that connection aspect is there. And, I've got a lot of great aligned friends, but really, showing up with as who you're meant to be so you can attract your people, because having those vulnerable, authentic connections are one of the greatest health hacks as well.
Yeah. I used to always feel like I was an outcast. Nobody understood me as part of my whole trauma picture, and got into counterculture like, oh, here's more of the outcast. So this is where I belong. And honestly, Instagram has its cons, absolutely. But some of the pros are meeting people that have been through this journey, like
Yeah,
you, like some of the other people I invite on my podcast, because it's just so refreshing to see that we are actually all alike. Like
so
we
true.
all have the same core wounds we're working through, the self-esteem stuff. Like we all have it. So we can connect on that level, and then also be there when we're ready to create and collaborate and
Hmm.
pass this message on. Part of this podcast, my theme is healed people heal people instead
Yeah,
of hurt people hurt people. So
beautiful.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
true.
Yeah. Yeah, great. also agree with, the big priorities of the day. And I used to also be one of those people that was like, oh, well, if I can't do this perfectly, if I can't get the caffeine enema and the sauna and the this and do this diet perfectly, then it's not going to work. And then I felt guilt and shame about it not working because I wasn't doing it perfectly. And just letting go of all of that and finding parts of your day where you can just practice feeling good, like not trying to heal anything, not try to fix anything, just rewiring to I can feel good. This feels
I
good.
love that.
The sun feels good.
100% agree. I love that.
Yeah, awesome. So tell everyone about the programs that you offer. How can they find you to work with you?
I would love to. So my primary body of work is my signature root cause healing program, Hormone Glow Up. I open enrollment. I've been opening enrollment for the program 3 times a year the past few years. Moving forward, it's going to open twice a year. So that's really how people can work with me. I worked one-on-one with people for nearly 15 years. I really don't work one-on-one anymore, but Hormone Glow Up embodies everything. So if you're looking for something that addresses your physiology, your structural health, emotional health, energetic health, spirituality, ancestral healing, like we go so deep. It's a lot of deep dive educational classes. It's a lot of somatic integration. And it's also the place where like you get my support. So I'm very hands-on and active within the group coaching realm. And I'm going to be relaunching retreats again this year, which is really exciting. Yeah, so it's something I've done past years, but didn't have any retreats in 2024. And it is like more advanced, so it wouldn't be for like a newbie, but I'm getting into these detox retreats I've always wanted to do. So it's 6 days and it's 3 sits with Cambo, with a colonic each day. I'm bringing in Kundalini codes activation, lymphatic massage. We've got a source point energy healer, massage therapist. So it's just a lot of purging physically and emotionally and energetically. I mean, it's just going to be so epic. So those are going to begin launching twice a year again. I would say those are like my two primary like ways to work with me. And then MicroFlow. So that's, it's a separate company, but you can just check it out on Instagram. It's at microflow.healing, or the website is microflowhealing.com. But that is my microdosing supplement company. There's so much information on the site. And I will be relaunching a program called Rewired that I've done in years past. It's just going to be more of a self-paced program to support the microdosing journey with like anchoring in the foundations and a lot of the basics we started today. So it's not like here's a pill to fix you. So that will be an option again in 2025.
Awesome. That all sounds amazing.
Yeah.
The retreats, are they going to be like destination? What does that look like?
So I've done a lot of beautiful destination retreats, and this one, I think people would think it's like not the most ideal destination. It's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Reason being is Milwaukee has the top colon hydrotherapy clinic in the US, and it's just stunning, beautiful, best clinic ever. And it's a good friend of mine who owns it, and it's just like so bougie and they're just the best of the best at what they do. So I found the most perfect venue ever near that space, and I want to be near the clinic because we're going to be working together. So Milwaukee, awesome. Wisconsin, guys.
Sure. Yeah. And when you're doing a retreat like that, it's about inward. So it doesn't have to be at Cancun or whatever.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people would be shocked with like, if you're not from the Midwest, I grew up in the Midwest, but like Lake Michigan is so stunning, and it's going to be a location near Lake Michigan, lots of like open space. There'll be a lot of nature time too. So it's not just like, I don't know, we got to shift our thinking about what it looks like, but yeah, it will be beautiful.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah. So tell everyone where to find you, so we can link it in the show notes.
Yes. Instagram's the best place at It's Christy Nault, and that's where I'm the most active. I do have a new platform coming next year. So just like a lot of new exciting things in 2025. But for now, hit me up on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you, Christy. It's been so amazing to sit down and chat with you about all the things finally.
All the things. Yeah. You have a very grounded energy. It's really nice to
Thank
just
you.
like be with you and chat with you.
Thank you. I am a Virgo, so that's
Okay,
very
that tracks. Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I am just so thrilled that you're listening to the Healer Revolution podcast. This has been a huge passion project for me and super therapeutic on top of that, helping me to use my voice and connect with other like-minded individuals. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like and subscribe. Please share on social media or with your audience or friends or loved ones. I truly appreciate it. It does take a lot of time and financial costs to run the podcast, and it is not a moneymaker, let me tell you. So if you are enjoying this, I would truly appreciate your support just by sending me a post, a like, and a subscribe. Thank you so much.